to put this into some larger context, in Winnipeg, an Antifa member, completely weaponized by liberal and police rhetoric, that convoy protesters were white supremacists, violent Nazis. These are people who go through their life saying that I'm going to punch a Nazi. And then when the TV tells them the Nazis are in town, what do you think they're going to do? He took his Jeep, drove into a convoy protest, hit 4 of them through his own ineptitude. He didn't kill them. He just injured them. He was out on bail the very next day. And yet Tamara, she's held in jail for 9 days this time for breach of a non-communication condition, which is completely unheard of. And you have to remember, they tried to breach her on conditions for simply accepting this award.
Hey, I want to let you know something. A few weeks ago, I was at a crime scene and I was a witness to a crime. Not exaggerating. It was the annual Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom Gala Dinner for Freedom. It's named after the late columnist George Jonas, who really wrote about freedom a lot. And I've loved going to these things. I love the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. They do civil liberties work. Just outstanding. John Carpay's their boss. He's been on our show a dozen times. I like going to show support for them. And I was excited that Tamara Lich, the trucker grandma organizer lady, was there as the recipient of the Freedom Award. And she's also a client of the Justice Center. I had actually never met Tamara Lich before, so I posed with her for a selfie that I use as my little, avatar, as it's called on social media. Other people, and I want to tell you, it was very busy, and I'm almost to my point here. Rex Murphy spoke. It was very exciting. And it was a thrill to be in a room with, 400 or 500 freedom-loving people to celebrate freedom instead of all the heckling and the nagging we get from authoritarians. But my point is, I saw Tamara Lich. She was the honoree of the night. And she was just beset by well-wishers posing for a photo or a selfie, although it wasn't really a selfie because others took the photo. Now, you know what that's like, right? If you've been to any public event where there's sort of a star, people say, can I get a photo? Yes, they pose, they take, everyone sort of freezes their mouth. They're not talking during the photo, right? That's an important point. They're not talking. They maybe say cheese, but they're not talking, or they just smile and they're ready, click. So that's what it was like for Tamara Lich pretty much the whole night, where she wasn't eating at her table or giving her awards or reception speech on the stage. I know that because I was there. I know that because I sat 2 tables away from her. And I know that because I personally asked for a selfie with her and I got it. Now, I tell you all this, not to brag that I met Tamara Lich, although there's a tiny bit of that there. But what I've just described, the fact that she took a selfie with another trucker organizer named Tom Marazzo, was the thin pretext for the Ottawa police to order a national warrant out for Tamara Lich's arrest. I'm serious. The kind of thing that normally you do if there was a murderer on the loose or an escaped prisoner. And police waited, though. They waited. They knew she took this photo on June 16th. It was posted almost immediately. But they waited. And then they put out the warrant and had her arrested just before the July 1st weekend, when there was another Freedom Convoy in Ottawa. And it has been 9 days since she was imprisoned on the crime of taking a selfie. And she had a bail hearing on that today in Ottawa. And our chief reporter and friend, Sheila Gunn Reid, covered the hearing by video link. She joins us now to talk about it. Sheila, great to see you. I know you spent the whole day covering this bail hearing. Bail hearings, I can assure you, are not usually an all-day affair. Tell me how it was.
Well, I think you covered a lot of the nuts and bolts of why this is happening. Tamara Lich was arrested 9 days ago for breach of a non-communication condition of her release conditions from earlier, so way back in March, for taking that picture with a fellow convoy organizer, Tom Marazzo. But she never actually really communicated with Tom Marazzo, and that's what's prohibited in her bail conditions. she just took a photo with him. And one of the stipulations of her bail conditions are that if she is in and around other convoy organizers, communicating with them, that it happens in the presence of her lawyers. Well, guess who her lawyers are? Mm-hmm. The Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. The room was teeming with Tamara's lawyers. Mm-hmm. And it was very interesting today because the homicide detective assigned to Tamara's case, a 22-year veteran of the force in Ottawa, Chris Benson. If you are murdered in Ottawa, I can't imagine that your case will ever be solved, because this guy didn't know who John Carpe was. He had no idea. He was asked on the stand, "Who's that guy?" "I don't know who he is." It was John Carpe, the head of the Justice Center. Then he was asked, "Who is John Carpe?" "I don't know who that is." So this police detective, he said, Tamara took a photo with this man, and this photo constitutes a breach of her conditions, but he didn't know who her lawyers were at all. He had no idea. So how can he breach her on a condition that says you can be with this guy if you're in the presence of your lawyer, when he had no idea who her lawyer was? Worse still, they extended this Canada-wide, nationwide warrant to pick her up on a non-communication breach, something Detective Benson testified that he had never done before. But it sounds like they sent 2 detectives, a supervisor, and another cop all the way from Ottawa out to Alberta, to Medicine Hat, to grab Tamara. They're treating her like she is public enemy number 1 instead of a cute little Métis grandma who embarrassed Justin Trudeau on an international scale. And that's really her crime here.
Did you say they sent 3 cops to bring her in? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think actually it might have been 4, but definitely 2 homicide detectives and a supervisor.
So that's from Ottawa. And of course, the Medicine Hat police couldn't be happier to comply with Trudeau. They're excited. Maybe they'll get promoted or something. So you had 3 or maybe 4 cops from Ottawa fly all the way out to Medicine Hat. And then you had the Medicine Hat cops on this. So this is like a major vice squad. This is like the major drug cartel squad, the mob squad. This is a major policing effort. I don't know if there was at the same time a larger police effort in the country. And of course, they took the homicide cop, because that's the level of gravity here. Someone taking a selfie. I want to know how it went. I followed your live tweets on the subject. You were watching this thing and tweeting along, and it sounded like the judge was not sympathetic.
No, this is a completely different judge than the one who reduced her bail conditions, which allowed her to go to the George Jonas Freedom Award banquet. That judge made remarks about, thought policing, and that, we're here to police behavior, but not thoughts, when the Crown was asking for very specific restrictions in Tamara's bail conditions. This one is quite different. If I had to guess, I would say on about a 60% chance that he would probably let her out of jail on Friday, when we will get his judgment. But he was allowing the Crown to ask questions I thought had absolutely no relevance in this case. For example, asking Detective Benson, who should be solving the 20 plus unsolved homicides in Ottawa, whether or not the convoy protests from February had any impact on the feeling of Canada Day. What has that got to do with anything?
Feeling. How do you measure a feeling? Was it a 4 on the feeling scale, or was it a 7 on the feeling scale?
Well, and what has that got to do with Tamara, who has been in jail since the 27th? She is not accused of organizing any protesting on Canada Day. She wasn't even free on Canada Day. But Benson said, there were fewer families out there on Canada Day, and, the ceremonies were a little more subdued on Canada Day. Well, that might have something to do with the Ottawa police scaring the daylights out of people for 10 days in advance. And Justin
blockading
Trudeau,
the whole thing, and seizing flags. To ask
maybe
a policeman,
maybe they were there protesting the fact that a little lady is a political prisoner. That can really throw a pall over your celebrations, don't you think?
Yeah, and I wonder if that cop even went to the Hill to observe, or if he was just regurgitating what the CBC media told him. What a disgraceful question by a disgraceful prosecutor. It's a disgrace that the judge allowed it, and it's a disgrace that the cop answered it, as if the cop has any expertise in feelings. But looking at it another way, it's a perfect question, because we all know this isn't about actually solving crimes.
Exactly.
We all know this wasn't actually about breaking the law. We all know we are far outside the norms for bail. I've never in my life heard of anyone being imprisoned and not granted bail for, quote, inciting malice, mischief, not malice, inciting mischief. No one's being charged with mischief, but this little grandma is being charged with inciting mischief that no one else is being charged with. So that's sort of weird. No bail, 9 days this time around, plus however many days the last time around. I remember my very first day as a law student in criminal docket court, and someone who received a sentence for sexual assault. I think it was a 30-day sentence he received for sexual assault. And that's what this little granny has now served, almost coming up on 30 days for having the wrong attitude. So in that way, so the feelings question, the attitude question is highly appropriate, because she's a political prisoner, and it's all about feelings. Remember, this is the same Ottawa police force that put out a tweet a few days ago saying, we're closing replies because this should be a safe place, because they were threatening people on Twitter. People were clapping back, and they were censoring people. The Ottawa police force is no longer a credible, objective, safe police force. They are political, they are woke, they are censorious, they're coloring outside the lines of their regular authority. And it is no surprise to me that they put arresting this grandma ahead of actually solving crimes. What a disgrace.
Well, and, to put this into some larger context, in Winnipeg, an Antifa member, completely weaponized by liberal and police rhetoric, that convoy protesters were white supremacists, violent Nazis. These are people who go through their life saying that I'm going to punch a Nazi. And then when the TV tells them the Nazis are in town, what do you think they're going to do? He took his Jeep, drove into a convoy protest, hit 4 of them through his own ineptitude. He didn't kill them. He just injured them. He was out on bail the very next day. And yet Tamara, she's held in jail for 9 days this time for breach of a non-communication condition, which is completely unheard of. And you have to remember, they tried to breach her on conditions for simply accepting this award. Yeah. They were trying to get her. They didn't want her to attend this award ceremony. They tried to breach her before. Now they're just breaching her after the fact. They're trying to teach her a lesson.
And what a disgrace that she had to wait 9 days to get before a judge. What was the reason for keeping her in prison for 9 days before getting her before the judge? My understanding is that normally you have the right to be before a judge in 48 hours or less. Again, just absolute politicization and corruption of our legal system, out of control. I mentioned in my opening remarks what the photo looked like and what photos are like. And every person watching this show has taken photos before. You pause, you stay as still as you can, and you don't talk. So she and the person she was allegedly communicating with were both in the photo smiling, not talking. But again, that's a perfect Stalinist crime. You were photographed with another enemy of the state. Was there any other, I guess you were watching by video. Could you detect if there were other media covering this? I bet there were, because they hate Tamara Lich. They want her in jail. So it's not like they would just ignore this. They hate her. What was the coverage like? Have you seen any other coverage from the media party?
It's very difficult to start looking at everybody else's coverage while you're trying to cover it at the corner of your ear. But I know that our reporter, William Diaz, was in the courtroom.
Oh, yeah.
And then from what I understand, there were 6 other journalists in the courtroom, probably mainstream media journalists who need their bloodlust satiated. Mm-hmm. And then there were probably another dozen or so on the live stream through Zoom. But I know the judge said there were 7 reporters in the courtroom. Mm-hmm. And of course, one of them was our William. So we had 2.
Right. Well, I'm glad he was there. And hopefully, a couple of independent journalists were there, whether it was Rupa Subramanya, who's based in Ottawa, or I know the Epoch Times is an Ottawa reporter. So, I'm glad this is getting coverage. It'll be fascinating to see. If you have trouble wondering what the left would do with this, I mean, imagine if a Black Lives Matter or I don't know more, or if, I don't know, Stephen Guilbeault, the cabinet minister who was a Greenpeace criminal who broke into the CN Tower or broke out of it and had a whole stunt. He was convicted. I don't think he did a day's time in prison. And imagine if you held an environmental protester for 9 days, plus I think she was in prison for 13 days beforehand.
Yep.
So 22 days in prison. She hasn't had a trial yet. She hasn't been convicted of anything yet. Taking a photo with someone else who's on the enemy's list. Imagine what the media party would say if David Suzuki, who willingly goes to commit crimes, to be in illegal protests, blocking things, sabotaging forestry or oil sand sites. He goes and deliberately breaks the law. Imagine if he were in jail for even one night, let alone 22 nights. The whole establishment would go nuts.
We don't have to imagine this, Ezra. We have David Suzuki saying, maybe pipelines are going to blow up. And then a short time after, there's that whole work site of Coastal GasLink that is absolutely trashed by radical environmentalists. And nobody ever accused David Suzuki of inciting violence and vandalism, let alone mischief. But Tamara Lich, because she said, hold the line.
Yeah.
She's in jail.
Yeah. Well, I really think that Canada has a civil rights problem. I don't think any of the normal checks and balances in our entire democracy are working. The media is in cahoots with Trudeau because he pays them off, and they're ideologically sympathetic to him and opposed to the truckers anyways. I saw this bizarre Dear Diary series of tweets from a CBC reporter today who despises Tamara Lich, who, as you mentioned, is a Métis grandma, but he denounces himself as a white man. It's the most bizarre thing to think that such woke, corrupted journalists at the CBC and elsewhere would hold Trudeau and his abusiveness to account as a joke. I'm worried about your live tweets about what this judge looks like. The police are disreputable. Never obey an Ottawa police officer without challenging them because they're clearly out of control. I'm not counseling lawlessness. I'm saying challenge them because they're clearly out of control. And
yeah, but all those things you're describing right there, sorry to interrupt you, but all those things that you're describing right there is why the convoy happened.
Yeah.
The courts failed, the judges failed, the bureaucracy failed, academia failed, the police failed, our churches failed, civil society failed. And so it was to the truckers and their supporters who stood up. And that's why they went to Ottawa. Yeah. All the problems you're describing, they failed, so the truckers did something.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you covered that. I would recommend to people on our website and on Sheila's Twitter feed, you can go and get the moment-by-moment live tweeting of the trial. I read it. Very informative and frankly a little bit worrying. Sheila, thanks for championing that case. And you do a lot of these court reports. There were other reporters there today, but I know in the past, for example, you were literally the only journalist covering the persecution of churches that are being shut down. And Jason Kenney, even though he's been sacked as the leader of the United Conservative Party in Alberta, he's still the premier and he's still prosecuting and persecuting them. Thanks for doing your great work, Sheila. And you say the results of this bail hearing should be released on Friday. Is that what you said?
On Friday, yes. Friday at 1:30 Eastern time.
Absolutely gross. The judge has all the facts. He can issue a verbal ruling tonight.
Sure.
Or tomorrow. Why doesn't he stay up late and work through the night and issue a verbal ruling tomorrow? And then say, detailed written reasons to come later. That's what you do when you're in a hurry. I don't know if you remember when we went to court in a real hurry, when we were banned, when Rebel News reporters were banned from the leadership debates in the federal election. In both cases, the judges said, I have to give an immediate ruling because this is so urgent. Here's my immediate ruling, reasons to come later. And frankly, those judges took months because, there was no more urgency once they let us in. Imagine being such a lazy bones. It's Tuesday. I need Tuesday night and Wednesday night and Thursday night and Friday. I'll make my announcement because, I got other things to do. And that woman can soak in jail for another Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so she'll be at 25 days pre-custody because I'm a busy judge. I'm busy. I'm an important person. And this woman can rot in jail for 3 more days because I'm so important she can wait.
It's a disgrace.
Sheila, thanks for your time. Keep up the beat. Keep up following this. We got to do it.
I will.
All right, there you have it. Sheila Gunn Reid, our favorite person, chief reporter. Stay with us. Your letters to me are next. What you just saw was an excerpt from my nightly show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every weekday, I do a monologue. Usually it's about half an hour. Then I interview an interesting guest, and then we read my hate mail or my fan mail, whichever is more fun. It's only available behind a paywall, though. That's how we pay our bills here at Rebel News. We don't take a dime from Justin Trudeau. But the good news is it's only $8 a month, about half the price of Netflix. And in addition to my nightly show, you also get weekly shows from 4 other friends here at Rebel News. So you're getting 36 shows a month just for $8. I think it's worth it. And even if you're not quite sure, do it anyways, because we rely on viewers like you to keep us free and independent. I promise you I'll never take a dime from Trudeau. Just go to rebelnewsplus.com and click subscribe. Thanks.